Welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. We want to take on our second conversation this Wednesday morning, matters of women taking center stage. And over the weekend, the Second Lady Dorcas Rigathi talked about empowerment programs, particularly financial empowerment programs for boys and young men. This is what forms like the backdrop of our conversation this morning, even as we look at how the empowerment program has been done for girls and just what we can do to bridge that particular gap. My guest will be helping us talk about this. That is Deborah Odenyi, who is a Kenya program coordinator at Girl Rising. Thank you for making time. I don't know why I almost called you Dorcas. It is Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing?
Doing well.
Are you good?
Yes.
Easy, relaxed?
Super.
Ah, good, good.
What did you expect of a mwalimu?
All right, let's just start from understanding Girl Rising. You know, the idea, concept, what it's geared towards, the kind of programs that take place at Girl Rising.
So Girl Rising is a non-profit that uses the power of storytelling to change the way the world values girls and their education.
Okay.
Yeah, especially girls and their rights. And so we create films, resources that inform the rights of girls and their education. We also collaborate with organizations, especially those on the grassroots level that work to empower the education of girls and advocate access for education of girls. And then we activate change in ways that change is community-led and also supports the education and access of the same education for girls in communities.
Yeah.
Yes.
From your response, I'm hearing a lot of education. I know there's a lot of programs for girls, not just education. We have some who are doing pad distribution, some who are doing empowerment and leadership. So for you and Girl Rising, why specifically education? Why did you just, choose to really largely focus on matters of education?
We know that education is the liberating tool. It's an empowering tool. And so we look at not just having an education, but accessing education and getting quality education for these girls. And we believe that when a girl is educated, then she's empowered to make decisions for herself, to be able to advocate for others as well and improve communities. And so at Girl Rising, we really work on life skills programs that support girls. We know they have a voice, but do they have the confidence for their voice to be heard in community? Do they have the agency? Are they able to take agency, take action, and also just against the gender bias, take action for themselves, have the agency to transform the way the community thinks about them with regard to gender, especially biased norms that affect them. Yeah.
All right. So it's one thing to have education, it's a different story to have access to it. From what you have been covering in the different areas, how has this been looking like in terms of access of education? To what extent is the reach of education?
I must commend the government. They've done quite much with regard to access to education for all children, which is a right. And what
It's actually in the Constitution.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Access to education for all children by the government has made great progress. You know that all children are required to enroll in school when they get to the age of 6. And basic education is free for government. And many schools have been set up in communities and around the country where they access this education. But there are areas that are marginalized, especially for the girls that I support, the girls that we work with in marginalized areas. We still have issues of access to education. Regardless of the fact that education, the basic education is free, the government is ensuring there is 100% transition from primary to secondary school, provision of facilities, a building of schools has been done, even looking at a transformation of education with with emerging trends, you know, global trends with regard to education. There's a current reform from 844 system to now the CBC.
Yes.
Yeah, but there are those that are not able to access education in communities. You may not believe this, especially in informal settlements where we work and in some parts of rural Kenya. And so when we look at accessibility, we are also not just thinking of them getting to a school. Are they really able to stay there? What is their survival rate in this school for them to be able to have the education they intend to? So we have issues that still hamper the government's efforts. We're looking at tribal clashes. Right now, some schools have been closed because of cattle rustling. We know that that's hampering education, right? We have gender norms. We have communities who still do not value education. And so they do not see the need for their children to access education. We also have pockets of religious beliefs who do not really value education for their children. We have issues of poverty. Much as education is free, it is not entirely free.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's some levies they're expected to pay in those schools. They're supposed to buy resources. And so issues of poverty in some areas affect children not to access this education. Or if they do it at a very late age. You know, we're talking of class 1 at 6 years. You find a child getting into class 1 at 9, 8 years. And so them advancing to the next level of education will not be as those who have started the education at the right age.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And so then, Deborah, how dire is this situation? Because I want to believe that you've at least traversed some of this area that you talk about marginalized, and I can really feel your passion, you know, when you talk about particularly matters of education, and this again geared towards the girls mostly. But then, how dire is this situation in the marginalized area? Much as government has tried to, you know, do its bit here and there, but how bad is it in terms of access to education, also particularly for the girls? We'll come to boys momentarily, but also particularly for girls.
But no, historically, girls have been so unfortunate, I would say.
Can we say that now?
Historically, yes.
Historically,
but
yes.
not now.
No.
And that still affects them even today.
All right.
In areas where I work, you say I've traversed.
Yes.
And there's no place I've not moved in this
you
country
have,
with regard to education for children. And so,
how bad? Perhaps you might be helping the task force to understand some of these things that they might need to be looking into, particularly in those you know, very deep marginalized areas. How bad is it?
No, for the task force, I wouldn't want to go into that because they have their mandate to carry on with that.
Yes.
But I wouldn't say the situation is dire, but like there are those who are still affected by that, yeah? And whoever they are talking to should be those on the ground performing these tasks, especially with regard to education. You know, it's a different thing to speak to somebody who implements it in the field or in the schools, and it's a different thing to speak to those who sit in boardrooms to ensure the education is implemented. So I know they have their mandate. I wouldn't want to digress and get into that.
Sure. All right. Okay, fine. So then you also talked about gender norms, customs, traditions. To what extent has this, you know, brought a burden when it comes to access of education and for the girl child? Because again, this is what you largely deal with. We have a lot of empowerment programs for girls, and also this when it comes to matters of education. How has our traditions as Kenyans, for example, our customs been a detriment to this?
Yeah, I agree. Gender issues, you know, for a long time in Kenya, they have been thought of women issues, and so affecting girls so much that their potential is stifled by issues like early child marriage, you know, like economic inequalities, digital inequalities, gender-based violence, all these affect the access for education for girls and their survival in schools. And so it's imperative that we address these issues, especially with regard to girls, so that they are able to fully actualize their potential. They are able to dream for themselves, know that there are opportunities for them to achieve. You know, you speak to girls and trying to empower them, just empower them with life skills, talk to them about success for their education, to work towards achieving their dreams. And you listen to some of them and you're like, okay. So I spoke to a girl and she was telling me, all I would need is love. And so I talked to her, prodding, what do you mean by love? And she says, every sense of that word. And thinking of it now, do they get this from wrong places? I would call wrong places. Recently, we had the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health actually release statistics of over 45,700 girls between January and February who had been handled as expectant mothers. That's huge. We're talking of about 18%. And looking at it, maybe let me just bring it close. So these are girls who are aged between 10 and 15 years. And we are talking of 1 in every 5 girls already being a mother at that age. And so when we talk, it's 10 to 15. Already a mother. You see, that is already a stifle to their education. And we know that when a girl accesses education, it's empowering for them. You know, they're able to lead a better life because they stay longer in school. You know, by the time they complete primary, transition on to secondary, and we're thinking of now them getting into college, that is already spent time. We're talking of about 23-year-old, a 25-year-old who is now able to make decisions for themselves. A girl who is able to now make a decision on whether she'll have children, how many children. She's able to have a good life for herself, her family, and which will now translate to a good community, and as well as girls who have been empowered through education will definitely be economically better as compared to those who've not gone to school. They're able to get a job, even if it's setting up a business or something that would empower them economically. And so we know they save a lot. Girls save a lot, women save a lot. And they plow almost 90% of their resources back into their families, into communities. And that is why we say gender issues, gender norms, these biased norms have stifled the education of girls in a big way.
Much as we're having good number of programs for girls, we'll come to that. I want us to take a very quick breath, Deborah, but also when we come back, I want us to talk about what exactly it means by gender equality. And even as we champion for girls, are we doing this at the expense of boys? We'll talk about that. Time for that breather. When we circle back, we continue with more of this conversation on matters of gender imparity, still with my guest, so stay put. Welcome back. Still holding court with my guest, Deborah Odenyi, the Kenya Program Coordinator, Girl Rising, of course, talking to us about matters of gender imparity and how to bridge that gap. Now, as we continue our conversation, Deborah, now I want us to talk about the gender inequalities or equality. You know, this has been a kind of a statement out there. There's gender inequality. We need to bridge that gap. We need to find an equal balance. But just make us understand, when you talk about gender equality or inequality, what exactly do we mean? What are we talking about?
So gender equality is recognizing sameness, you know, everyone being at the same level, and going by the definition like UNICEF defines it, it is boys and girls, men and women enjoying equal opportunities, equal rights, equal protection without recognizing needs. And so it's actually basically everyone being at the same level, being treated with the same sameness. Yeah.
So everyone being treated the same, regardless of gender. We're talking about both boys and girls.
Yes, that's why I mentioned girls and boys, men and women.
Men and women, does not matter.
Being recognized as the same.
Okay, yes. I hear you. So coming down to Kenya, it has been a pertinent issue over time. And just basically, and that's why I wanted us to begin with what you're doing at Girl Rising, because you realize even from what you've enumerated, there's a lot of issues that girls still face up until now. For instance, when you talked about the issue of pregnancy and what the MOH released, and even during COVID-19, the numbers were spiraling, skyrocketing. And you know, the question will still remain, much as we have good number of empowerment programs for girls, we can't vacate the fact that they still face quite a lot. But on the flip side, we are now saying that a lot is being done for the girls at the expense of the boy. Let's just start from there. Do you agree with that?
No.
Oh?
I don't.
Why not?
Boys have not been forgotten. I think we just exclude, sometimes do not involve them in conversations that we have with girls for some programs. But at Girl Rising, I should say, we involve the boy.
How do you do that?
Because we do, from the programs that we run, because we're looking at developing them having confidence, developing agencies. And I'll come to that later as I narrate. And being able to find support systems in the face of resistance. And so we include boys in our programs. Yeah, much as the name suggests, Girl Rising, we do include boys. And I do not agree with you that boys have been forgotten. There are programs that champion for boys. I know you, like you initially mentioned, a lot of programs, initiatives being set up, and even government hugely supporting girls. That makes people
even
feel...
in the international market,
Yes.
a lot of programs that they bring for is for girls empowerment. It's so rare to hear boys.
Yes, so that makes girls appear like they've been placed at a privileged place, like they've been raised on a pedestal. That's not the case. We include boys, and that the fact that there is active advocacy for the education of girls, because girls, like I said initially, historically, you even mentioned, they were hugely severely affected by the pandemic. It's true. But let me tell you, there are programs being championed out here for boys. I know a few. I know one being run by Eric, Yazua Africa, developing boys into men, and creatively done. And we have involved him many times on programs that we champion for girls. And I remember one quote he told us in one of the sessions we were holding. He said, raising boys, as they raise boys for leadership in their program, they are cognizant of the fact that if we do not do something for the boy child, we shall absolutely have done nothing for the girl. And I agree with that. And so that's why we are doing that. There's also a colleague who works with the homeless of Nairobi, champions a lot, Clifford Oloch, champions a lot for the empowerment of boys as well. And so I would just call, much as we are inviting men on the table for the discussion about girls, let the men also just come out and clearly support our efforts, like we do at Girl Rising, to support the boy child. We need them to coexist. We believe that when a boy in community is empowered as much as the girl, they will coexist, and maybe we will have better families later in future. And when they exist, we believe they become allies for one another. They have peer support for the other. Let me give you a story of one of the sessions. So when we hold the sessions at Girl Rising, we listen, we use the power of storytelling, and so we share experiences, even with the participants. And one boy just raised, I said, I have a story to tell. So yesterday we were to go to school, because most of our programs are after school or weekend or during the camps, holidays. And so he said, my younger sibling is unwell, but I'm in the same class with my twin sister. And my mom, in the morning, when we were preparing to go to school, asked my twin sister to stay at home to take care of the ailing sibling. And I told my mom that I am not going to accept my sister to stay home. I'm not going to lie to my teacher that my sister is unwell. She is not. We are both going to school. And they went to school. And getting to school, because the boy knows when he goes back, that conversation will still go on. He decides to request the teacher for a note to take to the mom, explaining why the girl has to attend school. And so we're looking at such examples, you know, stories that really make sense, inculcating such values into young boys like that, to support, to become an ally to the sister, so that he knows my sister needs these contact hours. She's supposed to attend school as required and not miss school. And so you can see that's how we involve them.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's just a call that let us all advocate for the boys. We have not reached the threshold for the empowerment of the girl child.
You know, from that story, I'm just thinking that this is actually in this age and time. And this is a parent who's telling the girl to stay at home while the boy is going in school at this in this 21st century, in 2022. Of course, again, it goes back to tradition and customs. It shows you that the girl is supposed to be a home. How is it put? To take care of the home. Take care of things in the house while the boy is away. And this is why the mom found it fit to say, you remain at home, take care of the younger sibling as your brother, as the boy goes to school. So it shows you much as, there's quite a lot that is being done. There's still some holes here and there that we perhaps might be needing to fill. And also, I like the fact that you also have programs for boys, because again, even in your response, you touched about having better homes and better families. And again, you'd understand that the conversation being peddled around, especially at this time, was the same question I was asking you, empowering the girl so much at the expense of the boy, and it being a ripple effect factor of why perhaps you don't have sort of like stable homes as at now. See the way you are putting your face.
True. Cases of femicide. I know you've covered quite much
a lot
in your
of
shows.
that, exactly.
And the reverse is the same. Why? We need to mainstream gender.
And put a balance on this.
True. And we need to involve all. Like the story I'm telling you of this parent. Do we have these conversations in school, but do they get home? Do the same conversations get home? You can listen to some of the responses about the CBC. You know, parents do not like being pitched to. Do this, do that, you've not done this, you've not paid that. It's about showing them why they need to do ABCD, showing them why and not telling them. Then you'll make headway. I remember in one of the institutions I worked in, so before I got into working in development work, I headed an institution and realized that in most of the parental meetings, engagements I had with the parents and caregivers, like 98% were women. And to give back to education for their daughters, so they got free education in the institution I was working in, fully funded, but they only had to come back and work at a certain time as a way of giving back to the education the daughters were getting from this organization. And I realized there were some parents who would abscond and asking why they wouldn't come to attend to their duties, because it became kind of a problem. And so I invited them for a conversation and realized that the way they work, you know, many of them would go for jobs that did not have how the menial jobs, you know, like if you don't go, you're not paid. So in informal, casual work. And so I asked them, what do you want me to do, or how do you want us to work? And they told, I gave a suggestion, listening to them and their conversation, the issues that are affecting them. I asked them, and if I gave you a time to choose, or when you are able to come and work. And so the deputy I was working with at that time, my colleague, and I made a schedule in a way that they were able to pick times when they felt they're able to come and work, you know. And so we got it working really smoothly, and with time got men now involved into the education of their daughters. They would attend meetings, because I realized when we have a celebration, they come. When we need to engage about issues of school, they send the mothers to these girls. And so, involving them at that point and just having conversations about school with parents, I think would bridge the gap in gender. And as I still feel with issues of inequality, there's still a milestone we need to do in our institutions of mainstreaming gender. You know, even in places of work, we still have issues that are hugely affected by patriarchal, patriarchy. And so these need to be addressed to bridge that inequality.
Now, even as talk about bridging that equality, I just want to pick your brains, particularly on what the second lady said, given that this is part of also what you're largely, deal with matters of gender. She talked about, it's actually a proposal of financial, sort of like well-being, or giving financial assistance to boys and young men. And when she made that statement, it really caused quite the conversation, amongst Kenyans. And a good number of people saying that indeed it's about time we also put boys and men on the map. We've not really had so much programs. Yes, I know you've talked about some here and there, particularly from partners and friends that you deal with. But even as you listen, you get hold of that particular statement that we now need to have financial inclusion or financial well-being for young boys and men. What do you make of this? Is it an aspect of involvement that has been missing so much so that a statement from a statement such as this would come from her?
I think we just all need to recognize that there is need to also empower the boy child. So much has been invested in girls, I still believe engaging boys and having to put efforts in place that also make them look included and not excluded in changing the way they are treated, because they will then view girls and women differently. And like women have been empowered in support with economic empowerment activities, for me that is a welcome idea. If it would help, then it would still be a ripple effect for even to the families. We need to, the boys need to be taught the importance of an equitable world. We know in our societies, you and I know, men wield a lot of power. But just making them understand that there is the importance of them understanding that it's important to have equality of the genders, and also talking to them about men who are able to create a just world for women, just balancing it, and so, recognizing the fact that they are good, as good as they lead in community, in families, in wherever they are, women as well can do so. And so this for me would be a way to support the likes of Eric Foyazua, Africa supports Clifford Olwach, and any other person who is there to support the empowerment of young boys, and programs that champion for both boys and girls. For me, it's a welcome. It's a welcome idea.
You know when the second lady talked about this, Madam Dorcas Rigathi, about this financial empowerment, it came off as if we don't have programs for boys at all.
No.
And you've talked about your partners, Eric and the likes. So then I just want to pick your mind on this one. Why do programs of young men and boys not so frontiered or even known compared to those of girls? Because I tend to feel that perhaps this is what then brings that inequality, so to speak, and sort of like makes us think that a lot is being done so much for the girls at the expense of the boys, because you don't even know that they exist.
They exist.
Yeah,
you and I know they exist.
Yeah, but I can tell you for sure, good number of Kenyans don't even think that it's there. So you mentioned one program, then one will say, okay, kuma inakuanga. Has this been an impediment? For instance?
It has not. I think we just, the way men are socialized, even listening to them in the sessions that we hold, men are socialized not to be vulnerable. You hear of statements as, kuwa mwanamume.
So it goes back to temperament also.
Man up, you know, men are not supposed to cry. You know, men have emotions. They're affected
and they're
equally.
human beings.
They're human beings.
Why would they cry?
I know. And so we advocate for that.
Yeah.
There's a partner we work with in Kawangware, a Big Picture Land in Kenya. She advocates for leadership. She works in low-cost support school, low-cost private schools in the community of Kawangware, you know, and working with students who are low flyers, you know, those who are considered may not be considered in any high school or something. So besides her, she's an educator. She has a background of education, and so she supports teachers in these community schools and also does leadership programs for both girls and boys. And part of the projects of their leadership camp is that they develop projects that solve issues in their communities. And boys have come up so well with issues on housing, issues to support girls, issues to support mental health, you know, supporting the elderly in community. So the programs are there, but a lot of pronouncement is for the girls. And so also I'm saying they're there. There are organizations, there are parties working with the boys to empower them, but now just they're not that loud like
and
the
now
girls.
That's what we need.
And that's why we need it pronounced, and I like that the second lady is up to that task. So that we do not appear like we are excluding the boy. We are not. There's no way you will hit ground with a program for girls and exclude boys. It will not work because and all the institutions, like majority of the institutions in Kenya, are co-ed.
Whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. We've even heard of conversations of sanitary towel support. The government is doing quite much, especially for those girls going to public institutions. But of course now the private are excluded. That is another inequality. You know, a girl going to a school in Kenya is a citizen. So why should a girl in a public school have access to sanitary towels and not these ones in private schools? And so now the organizations coming up supporting those who are not able to access such.
But they're saying in private school you can fend for yourself.
There are those. But the low-cost schools in informal settlements, they cannot afford that.
I hear you.
There are those in marginalized schools, and even those in public schools, not all of them have access to those. And sometimes at some period of time the supply comes to an end, and so until the next batch of supply is brought, what do these girls do? So you can imagine, we look at a girl missing school like 4 days in a month on average, and a term is like 3 months, so we are talking of 12 days in a term times 3 terms times the period she's in school, because she'll be in that. And so those are the inequalities we are talking about. And so the discussion also sparked up. And so you bring sanitary towels for girls. What are you doing for the boys?
See? What are you bringing them?
For the boys?
What are you bringing them?
We're bringing them a lot of stuff that they need as support. So as the girls get the sanitary towels and maybe panties to support, we're also supporting the boys maybe with their undergarments as well, so that they all feel included. And so with the support now that we'll get from the second lady, I think such programs will be propelled to a success.
And inclusivity is the key. Everyone needs to feel they are part of this society, not one gender feeling that one is being advanced at the expense of the other. Because again, also when you every time you talk about advancing women and girls issue at the expense, you know, of boys, there are also some women and girls who still feel, wait a minute, it has been a patriarchal society since history, as you rightfully put, and you got some organizations, much as we are having women's issues being advanced, we still have these things that curb their growth and development and empowerment at the end of the day. So clearly a balance and inclusivity is the only way we can achieve this. As we exit this space, Deborah, very quickly, talk to me about the progress of advancing gender equality, even just from what you're doing at Girl Rising as we wind up.
So advancing this, we're looking at commitment to ending child marriage, as was envisioned for Kenya in 2030. We really hope this would go a long way in balancing gender, creating sustainable livelihoods. You know, economic inequalities also have issues with regard to education especially. So like the ravaging hunger, you know, some schools have actually stopped.
Yes.
Because of that.
Yes.
You know, children go to school because they know there are feeding programs in school, and they are sustained there. You know, there's no way you can teach a child who's hungry. Mainstreaming gender into institutions of learning, institutions of work, into communities, that is still a huge issue. Yeah, you know, we are still struggling. And so looking at that, and also just rolling out the 100% transition for schools.
That's also a very big challenge.
It's a very big challenge and causes a lot of inequality, especially with regard to education. We know families where you find, because high school education is to be paid for, and maybe a family has 2 children. One is a boy, one is a girl. Believe you me, the boy will go and the girl will not. Yeah, and so we need to also look at that. Also looking at the 2010 Constitution, there was the bill for education for all children, the Bill of Rights for that.
Just hold it there. You're really enumerating very pertinent issues. I want us to take a very quick breather. We circle back with talking more about those programs therein, Deborah. Time for that breather. Still stay with us. We are continuing with this conversation with Deborah after this break. Exactly 9 on the nose. We continue with our conversation. Just before we get to wrap it up with my guest, still on matters gender imparity. Before we took that break, Deborah, we were talking about you know, the gender inequalities, the gender equality, and the progress therein. So just talk to me about these programs that you are enumerating in terms of how you're progressing on matters of gender equality. Yeah.
So as we work with girls and boys in communities, we encourage all of them to dream for themselves, you know, dream of the lives they would like to lead. You know, we're talking of leadership programs for them. And so we encourage girls and women to be confident, you know, and to be positive of self, and looking at what they really want for their lives. Like this year, you know, we are proud that we have 82 women in Parliament. Yes. We are talking of 21
and the number
in Senate.
Is increasing,
yes, you know? And 7 elected governors. And so that is an inspiration to the girls who look to work into leadership, especially in public office. And we really encourage that. And then just having the agency to identify their rights and personal support systems. So who can support you? We do not like really go for programs that are academic oriented. We know that not everyone is academically endowed. We also think of creative arts. Yeah, we are looking at supporting institutions like the cry to rally out for STEM subjects, you know. So for the inequalities in school again, you know, do you know there are schools that today do not have a laboratory? A student will meet lab equipment in the final exam, you know. And so programs that support such institutions so that there is no anxiety when it comes to selection of subjects about science and even career, you know. So how does a teacher support a student?
Yeah, because over time we've heard that these are careers for boys, these are careers for, and I think this is also what has brought this inequality.
Yeah. And
who said?
No way. So just engendering career selection subjects, there shouldn't be any anxiety about that. And so those are programs that we look at, and also just those sitting back and not being in solidarity to advocate for this agenda on gender equality. You talked of the men, let them come on board, like
and speak.
And speak like the girls speak, like the women speak, like we advocate for them. And so,
but on that note, don't we need to do something on socialization bit? We're just having this conversation off air, and we realize that, you know, that aspect of telling them to speak, much as it's in the program, it's, you know, dates back from history. It comes from socialization.
Yeah, but we agreed men and boys are human. Yeah,
we did.
Emotions,
we actually did.
Yeah, and them to coexist, we need to support them. And so that has really to come in. Now we're also talking of wherever we are, can we enforce the two-thirds gender?
This government is trying here and there.
The two-thirds gender rule, we are trying. Can we get to where we are supposed to? The affirmative action, we're also looking at that. And so if we do all this, I know we are going to work towards gender parity, you know.
Yeah, I hear you. So then even as you say that we are trying here and there, even with this government, but can we get to that two-thirds? Let's not try. Can we get there?
We are struggling with it.
So then how would you speak to this aspect of, you know, the president signed a women's charter in June of 50-50. And there's been a lot of conversation on the fact that we haven't seen that. There's a bit of trial here and there. 7 governors, 7 CSs, women. The PSS will be nominated from next week, around 12, thereabout. You know, a bit of try, yes, but the mark is not quite there yet. What would you speak to this? What then do we need to do to actually make sure that we don't try anymore? We now get there.
I think it's just a matter of being intentional. Yeah, it's just a matter of being intentional. I love steering off politics, especially with regard to matters education, because then it's being objective. In your position, we are not even just talking about political space. Even in the corporate world, you know, even in our educational institutions, how do we work towards gender parity? You know, we need to practice that. It's something that we need to do it as a matter of intent and not try. If you commit to do something, just do it. Also speaks to integrity. You know, those are the values we want inculcated in the adolescents that we work with on our programs. Issues of values, you know. Do you live to what you commit to? Do you say A and you do B?
Exactly.
Yeah, and we would like this etched into the minds and the lives of these young children that we work with. So programs work with the ages of 9 years to 14 years. And so at that early age, we would like them to understand gender bias, inculcating to them values that will build their lives, critical skills that they will use later in life, you know, not just talking and not doing. So it's about commitment.
We need to move from just a conversation to actually actioning what we say. And it reminds me of what the former Chief Justice David Maraga once almost wanted to disband Parliament, because when that two-thirds threshold wasn't met, and then there was lack of understanding, why are we having this enshrined in the Constitution, and a decade later we are not quite there yet. So then this brings me to that question of Deborah, then what is the role of leaders in this gender equality progress? Which part do they play?
They just need to approach, like, wherever their leadership position is, let them approach policies with an engendered lens, you know, so that we are speaking the same language, not doing this in contradiction to what we say we commit to do. Yeah. Let's look at issues, policies and initiatives, and especially at the inception age, stages. How do you start? You know, that informs how the later stages will progress. And so from the inception, if you're talking of affirmative action, two-thirds gender rule, are we following it up from inception to the later stages? And so let's commit as leaders, wherever we are not just talking about politics.
Yes.
All areas, even in family, we need to do, even in our classrooms, wherever we are, we need to practice that. Yeah, and they say that role modeling is the best teacher, So what we do, the youth we have, the adolescents we have, the children we have are watching. And they will do the same. Yeah, they will do the same.
So if you keep saying and do none of what we say, they'll again come and say and do none of what they would say. If we have these things enshrined in law and it's just a paper written, penned down on paper, and we don't action it, we will keep making laws and not actioning what's.
And that's why at Girl Rising we commit to community-led change.
Okay.
Yes.
From that level.
From that level, community-led change. Changing mindsets, shifting the way people think, right from the ground. That is what will make it work. So you from your family, Debbie from their family, from the schools we go to. And at every level, we need to commit to that. Yeah.
So then what has been the progress, Debbie, since the inception of Girl Rising? Since you've just said that you begin from that community level, let's quickly understand, how has that progress, been like over years?
Not over years, I'd say like 3 years now, because we began in 2019, and ours is for now short term, because we work with students, and supporting organizations that do their own work, their co-work, and looking at it long term. So working with students, you do not expect any impact as at now that you would speak of, except for stories of change, like I have been mentioning to you, from organizations. And with the belief that supporting their work, we are going to achieve what we intend to change the way we view girls, their education, changing biases in norms, and changing the way communities view gender equality. That is the long term. And so when we listen to stories of organizations that we support working really towards achieving gender parity, then we know we will make progress. And I like those ideas that you have in the long time, change of mind, shift of mindset, because I'm a firm believer that good number of this, not even good number, it all begins in the mind. If there's a way in which your mind can be shifted on a particular issue or a circumstance, then what can't you do? Yeah, and just short term, maybe impacts would look like, let me give you a story of a girl in Kibera, one of the organizations we work with, Sunflower Trust. So she works on improving literacy skills for girls. So Rukia was brought up in Kibera, and that's where she's been all her life, and understanding the lives of community. We talk of community-led change, and so she works with low-cost private schools, and she comes up with programs in literacy at her center, Sunflower. And so she gets children who are really low at literacy levels. I know you've heard of a class 5 not being able to read. Yes, even a class 7. Those are the girls she supports. And believe you me, her first cohort transitioned to high school 100%, and they even had A's in English from support of the programs they get at her level of support. And you see, these are now girls who will go to high school, and of course now with basic skills in literacy, and all exams except Kiswahili are set in English,
which is a good initiative.
And it's the official language, and so those are the ones that we look at long term, having such girls who have good basic education, transformed now, transitioning to high school, confident girls who have the agency to lead change, to make decisions for themselves, to solve problems in their communities. However subtle, however small, we really encourage that, because we know now next they'll be challenged to do something bigger.
Exactly.
And so that's what we are looking at.
And I also hope in the long term you are looking at going to those really, just as you talked about, the marginalized areas, because even right now we are still talking about FGM. You can remember that the former president had talked about ending this practice by February of 2022. We're already past that. And I can tell you for sure, there are areas in this country whereby you reach a certain age as a girl, your education is capped and stopped at that point. If it's not early marriages, then it's matters of FGM. I know. I listen to those when I visit counties like Kajiado, where we have programs, counties like Narok, counties like Samburu, and listening to the facilitators in community who facilitate our programs, and they're like, we need to take these conversations to parents.
Of course, they allow their daughters to come for these camps. So sometimes they hold camps to keep girls away. You know, when schools are closed, then girls are susceptible to the cut.
Exactly.
And so they hold camps to keep them away from rich at home for marriage. Of course, when you get the cut, then that is a ticket for you to become married.
And that's how your
you know?
education stops.
Yes. And so looking at these girls as brides to be, mothers to be.
Imagine at 14, at 13.
You're talking of 14, 9.
I've even gone further to talk about 14 and 13.
Yes, and FGM, as we speak, you said we were supposed to have ended it in 2022. It's not ended. It's at 21%
You can
prevalence.
Imagine. You can
21%
imagine.
is
And even
huge.
counties just here, even in counties such as Meru, you can imagine this is still happening
there's a lady who was in the camp, one of the camps during the holidays, speaking to me during the holidays, and you could see her eyes were welling. They were like, you know, when we really work hard to ensure these girls go through primary school, but you can be very sure they are not going to high school. Even if they do, not all of them. It's you know, in her own words, it really wastes us.
This now brings that gender inequality that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So she's saying that I'm so sure primary they will do.
They will
Secondary,
do. And sometimes through struggle, hide and seek. And sometimes they have to be placed in boarding schools. But once they get home, they will be married off. And I like the women who come from these communities, and they are champions for these girls. They have rescue centers, they have safe houses to ensure they go to school. And when we talk of high school, I have a friend in Samburu who runs an initiative for girls. I visited some time back in 2016. When girls get to high school, they don't go back home. They will never be seen at home, because then they won't come back to school. So until they complete Form 4, until they complete college, they will be at her center.
Because it's that bad to go back home.
It's that bad to go back home. And sometimes even the boys are affected, because, you know, they are brought up to, as known as, they're the pillars of the home. And so at a certain age, what do you mean you're still going back to school? You're supposed to be married and take care of your family.
This is even happening for boys.
Yes, they even leave school to go find labor. There's an initiative we work with in Laikipia known as Drawing Dreams Initiative. Working so hard to ensure that they stay in school. They go to find work, sand harvesting, so that they're able to take care of their families at home.
I feel like culture and tradition is really...
It's a big
culture. You know, a culture is good. We are a product of cultures, but then there are things we need to shun away from.
We should, and you know, culture is learned.
And you can unlearn
you're
it.
not born with it. You can unlearn it. We can make it deliberate that the children we bear only learn what is progressive for them, and not what is retrogressive.
How do we make it practical, Debbie? Because I can tell you for sure this is an issue that is cross-cutting. And even as you talk about girls, just from the example you've drawn, even boys, in some communities, you get to a certain age, they are told, now your school life ends at this point, look for work. Why? Because again, there's another girl somewhere who also underwent the cut, and because they've already been initiated to be a woman, they're supposed to be married. Here we are talking about gender equality. Who really should be taking good responsibility for this, so that then we do not really have policies of by this time we need 100% in transition of schooling. By this time we need to have ended teen pregnancies. By this time we need to have ended FGM to make sure we have full inclusivity. Who needs to be taking full responsibility for this, Debbie?
All of us.
Okay.
Doreen, Debbie.
Everyone.
Everyone.
We can't say government needs to be doing this.
Government can only do so much.
Okay.
What are you doing at your level? Government's idea, no.
Hiyo maneno haiko.
Hakuna. Do whatever you can at your level.
Do parents also need to be sensitized and perhaps
I think I have mentioned this over and over.
On this one?
You know, like, I'm obliged by the work that I do to be a caregiver. And I understand the salient role parents play. We need to engage them. And even communities, regular creation of awareness. Let's keep mentioning it. Let's keep mentioning it. Yeah, not just once and it's put under the table. Let's keep doing it. Let's keep doing it, and we shall achieve it. Yeah, I believe so.
So let's not stop at any point.
No.
And even after you feel like you're achieving, let's continue doing it. All right.
And ensuring that both boys and girls enjoy their rights.
Yeah.
Education included.
Yes. Yeah, it is a basic right. And you've said over time, we can't even overemphasize, it is in the Constitution. Lastly, Debbie, how do we expand civic and civil space for women and girls? How do we expand this?
So I've been told, initially I talked about starting at an age where they have the voice and confidence to use their voice, the agencies, being able to dream for themselves. And so finally, when they become young women and women who are able to now get into civic education, we look at the commitment that they want to make to, and also society. So how do we look at women, you know, in spaces of politics, those who aspire to go into politics, are they being given equal space? You know, are they getting the same protection? Why would a man take the podium to campaign and listened to? And in some cases, when a lady takes to the podium, they are shut down. Sometimes they are attacked. You know, we need to come out. Just by virtue of being a woman. Yeah. Why? It is not fair at all. And so also just looking at ensuring that they are given support whenever they need to. Do they feel safe in the civic space that they operate in? We are talking of having equality in both elective and appointive. We talked about that initially. Yes, the affirmative action, the 2/3 gender rule. We need to support that. And even from institutions where we start learning, how do you empower both girls and boys when they seek for leadership, when you are assigned roles in those institutions, and even in the corporate world where work is? Are we also supporting gender equality? I need that needs to do that. And then just women having the confidence to identify their rights and working towards achieving them, and not just sitting back and hoping you will be given. Yes. No. That's another thing, actually. Go for it. Go for it. Don't just sit back. Go for it and you will reach. Be aggressive enough. True. Yeah, and so also county governments, now that there's devolvement of governments, are we working towards efforts in achieving gender equality in whatever we do? Of course, and social inclusion. Devolvement, there's a lot of patriarchy, you know? Still ongoing. Still ongoing and challenging all these efforts. But as much as it's being achieved, working towards achieving it at that national level, let it also be devolved. You talked of the CSs and what of the CCs in county governments. Oh yes. We have also, that too. Yeah, we need to hear in counties, out of the 10 CECs as per the Constitution, at least 5 going to women and 5 going to men. Inclusion and also special interest groups. Are we talking of those with challenges? Special needs, are we also including them? And so we are talking of equality across board. You know, there's something that you've mentioned. Anytime you want to end this conversation, you just bring something up. Maybe because I do so much. There's something you mentioned which has really piqued so much as you were responding there. The aspect of women. Don't wait to be given. No. Don't just sit and say, watanipatia, unajua mimi ni mwanamke. No. Go out there and also seek. If it's a position, seek for it, regardless of the challenges. The challenges are really quite there. And you know, when you talked about political spaces, it just pushed my mind back to the electioneering period and how good number perhaps of those that were vying for different positions are talking about how it's difficult for a woman to be in these spaces. First of all, because of the roles that come with just being a woman in its entirety, and then look at the position that you're going to seek for. So how can we bridge that? But then at the end of the day, go for it. Wacha tuseme ilikataa, but I did my best. Be able to balance, you know, what do you dream to be? Like, I dreamed to work with so many girls, so many teachers. And here you are. And around the country, and travel a lot and do it. And so for the girls, we tell them, have the confidence. What's your dream? To be a journalist? And push for it. Go for it. It doesn't matter. Go for it. It does not matter at all. Just go for it. waiting to be given how. Just put on
no one
teacher
will
cap.
give you.
Yes, when you get home, Debbie is now a mom, put on the mom cap. You know, when you get out there and you're a mentor and mentoring girls, put on that cap. Yeah, just balance it. And when you feel you need to rest, take
just
a breather.
Rest. Switch off that phone, do nothing, and just rest. But at the end of the day, go for it.
Don't wait to be given.
If it means you'll have to fight for these positions, fight for them. Of course, in a good way, but fight for what you think is right and what you want. Because there's no harm. Let it be said, I did my bit, I tried, even if it didn't come, but I did my bit.
Yeah.
I just didn't sit and I was like, nitapatiwa hiki tu.
No, but you know, even if you listen to those who have achieved, even those who've been elected to parliament, very few are first time.
Oh, yes.
Very few are first time. Many of them will tell you, I
tried over time.
I tried. And you know, the more you speak, and so the more you create visibility.
Exactly.
Yeah, the more you even go back and as you reflect. So why didn't I achieve it this time? Just sit back, reflect.
You make changes here and there. The next time you come back
like a catapult, you're gone.
You come back very big, better, and different.
True.
Good place to end this conversation, Debbie. Good place to end it now. And now let's finish. But thank you so much for your time and just talking to us about what we need to do. And you know what today was very key was not just talking about the girls, but trying to see how we can bridge that gap. Look for programs for girls, look for programs for boys, and trying to make sure that we don't have the inequality that exists, but then there's inclusivity for all and equal gender parity is what you are pushing for in this conversation this morning. And thank you for your insights and input. We greatly appreciate.
Thank you so much for having me. And I hope that all out there, my appeal is that we are all intentional about building and fostering exceptional culture and approach to gender issues. You know, Kofi Annan said that educating girls is to reduce poverty. And when we break the cycles of poverty, I tell you, we will go far.
Thank you.
We will really go far. Thank you so much for having me.
That has been Deborah Odenyi, Kenya Program Coordinator at Girl Rising. Of course, matters of gender imparity, trying to look for that good balance is what has dominated our conversation at this hour. And also a good place to now end Good Morning Kenya this Wednesday. We always appreciate your valued company from me and on behalf of the entire team. Asante sana. Till tomorrow, good morning.